Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels pregame show. I'm Mitchell Kaminski. We got a trade alert on our hands. Today, the White Sox announced they have traded outfielder Robbie Grossman to the Texas Rangers for a pitching prospect. It's a Hawaii native. Full name goes by David Maui Leeka Huopi Tuio Nitoa. Officially on the press release, they're just calling him Anthony Huopi Tuio Nitoa. It is a mouthful, but like many of you probably haven't heard of this guy before. He was not ranked inside the Texas Rangers top 30 prospects. Now that's a bit deceiving because Texas heading into this season, MLB Pipeline had him ranked as the seventh ranked farm system in the MLB. They arguably had the two best prospect combo. They had Wyatt Langford there. So they have a very good farm system. I think in the White Sox farm system, Anthony will be, I'm just going to call him Anthony for now. Last name, kind of a mouthful. He will be probably a top 30 prospect for the White Sox. Now, while he wasn't a top 30 prospect for the Rangers, I think this is a good victory for Getz. Now, you got to remember, Robbie Grossman, they just signed him to a minor league deal in March. And that was mostly because the offense needed some more professionals in there. There's a lot of guys slumping. They needed some more professional at-bats. And to Robbie Grossman's credit, he did just that. I actually really liked Robbie Grossman. He didn't hit the ball hard. He didn't slug all that well, but he worked good at bats. He was able to get on base. He had a 15.7% walk rate. That ranked in the top 95 percentile, or he was in the 95th percentile, I should say, in the MLB. So, I mean, he was working really good at bats for the White Sox. I don't know if that was sustainable, especially because he wasn't hitting that hard, but you're able to get something for him for a guy who just signed to a minor league deal. All for it. And this Anthony Huopi Tuio Nitoa, we're just going to call him Anthony, I think, from now on. That's going to be a mouthful to say. We got to get this kid a nickname. While he wasn't a top 30 prospect for the Rangers, he does have some accolades. He was an MLIB organizational all-star in 2022 and 2023. He went to the all-star game for the Arizona Fall League. And in that, they call it the Fall Stars game. In that game, he had a 2-strikeout performance. He looked pretty good doing it. He's mostly a reliever, and his stuff consists of, he has a fastball that sits in the mid-80s, around 94, 96. He can, if he really reaches back, he tops out about 97 miles an hour. He also has a slider that also sits in the low 80s, but that tops out at 85 miles an hour. Watching some of the film from this guy, though, that slider's got a lot of movement, and he looks like a closer. He's all tatted up. I mean, he's had 18 saves in his minor league career. He's mostly used as reliever. He has not given up a run this year. He's made 12 appearances. He's given up an unearned run, but no earned runs this year. So Texas League right now, he has the best ERA, spotless 0.00 ERA. All those appearances, though, came out of the bullpen. He's a 6'1", tatted up. I think he's just over 200 pounds. He's got the look of a closer. And that fastball, even though it sits in the mid-80s, it does look like it has a little life on it, and that slider has a lot of movement. His stuff plays really well. And for his minor league career, he's pitched 4 seasons, all of them coming in the Rangers organization. He has a 12.7. He's averaging 12.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. So pretty good in all things considered. I think for his career, he's holding opponents to a 213 average. This year, as we mentioned, hasn't given up. He's holding opponents to a 1.67 average. In those 4 seasons, he has 18 saves, 103 innings of work, and he has a career 3.15 ERA. So not too bad. He was initially drafted in the 30th round of the 2019 draft out of Pierce Community College in Washington. I'd never heard of Pierce Community College. I looked it up. They've actually had 11 players drafted in the MLB draft. Anthony, the latest to come out of Pierce Community College. I found that a little interesting. No really notable names coming out of there, but they have produced some MLB draft picks before. What really stood out to this guy, the opponent's average, he ranks right now 2nd in the league. He also has a really good whip. A lot of times when the White Sox bring in these arms, common theme you see, like Gregory Santos is a perfect example of this. They get these guys that throw gas, but not a ton of command. Anthony, on the other hand, looking at the numbers, the walk rate's not bad. It looks like he has a good command of the strike zone, why I think he could be an effective reliever. He's set to report to Double-A Birmingham. So I think, they could have something here. I think this kid has some potential. Like we mentioned, the reason he probably wasn't in the Rangers top 30 prospects is because how deep that farm system is. But those prospect rankings, I mean, you take those with a grain of salt anyway. So it looks like he's on the rise right now. He's having a really good year this year. He's going to be going to a good Birmingham Barons team that actually might have a chance to win the championship down there in Double-A. They're playing some really good baseball right now. So that'll be a good environment for him to come in. All these guys kind of growing together in a winning culture finally, which I think is important. I think that's not talked about enough. And a lot of times with the minor leagues, especially look at Charlotte right now, these White Sox minor league teams have a history of losing. And now you might be asking, well, who cares? It's just like the minor leagues. I think bringing these guys up in winning cultures, it does help. Now you take a look at, like, we'll go to hockey for a second. The Chicago Wolves, for example, that was like their always big sales pitch. Now they were not affiliated for a long time, but their big pitch to a lot of these teams is like, hey, look, we're trying to win the AHL Calder Cup every year. Your prospects are going to be coming up in a winning culture that's only going to help them thrive in the future. And you saw that materialize a lot with the St. Louis Blues. Now I know hockey and baseball a bit different, but I want these guys playing in a winning environment to get used to winning, because a lot of the guys right now they have up in the MLB clearly not used to that. So good trade for Chris Getz, able to get something out of Robbie Grossman, who, I mean, let's be honest, minor league deal, wasn't really expecting a whole lot. So that's good. That kind of leads in to our the next thing. So there's a report that came out this week from Bob Nightingale, which really shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but basically he said White Sox, they're looking to have a fire sale at the deadline. They're expected to trade starters Eric Fedde, Chris Flexen, Mike Clevinger, Michael Kopech, and Eloy Jimenez, according to USA Today's Bob Nightingale. So, I mean, that shouldn't really come as much as a surprise, but I think you see Grossman kind of the first domino to fall in all of those. So we'll see what other trades they make coming up, but that leads me into my next one. We'll talk Mike Clevinger. So he made his debut, 2024 season debut this week. He was one of the guys listed in that list of guys that the White Sox are trying to trade here. His debut did not go well. He was getting hit really hard. He had 2 baseballs that were like tattooed over 102 miles an hour. I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays were seeing the ball really well off of him. Now, this might be a controversial take. So with Clevinger, it's interesting. And we've discussed this at length before. You can listen to the episode when Missy Carroll came on the Sports Mocker or the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast and broke this down. But Chris Getz, before the season, was talking about he wants to win the trust of the White Sox fan back. You're talking about this during an episode of Foul Territory. He's like, hey, our goal for this season, I want to earn the trust of the White Sox fan base. And to AJ Przinsky's credit in that episode, he called him like, well, isn't that exactly what the last regime said? And it is. I'm a guy who likes to remain optimistic, so I still watch this crappy White Sox team, even though they've won 8 games, like to remain positive. So I'm like, you know what? We'll give Chris Getz the benefit of the doubt. Let's see if he can earn our trust back. With that Clevinger signing, it kind of was like odd to me because, like, if you're trying to earn their trust back, why are you bringing in a guy like Mike Clevinger? Because and we won't get, I mean, obviously you have that big cloud of all those allegations hung over his head. We won't get into that again, but I know a lot of people, well, he was found innocent. No, he wasn't found innocent. Really, the MLB just decided not to suspend him because he agreed to go to counseling, which is what the family there wanted. But where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been a lot of incidents with him. Look at his track record with Cleveland and San Diego. It's not a one-off. There's been a lot of issues with him, aside from the, obviously, the domestic abuse and child abuse allegations. And usually people that get those type of allegations, that's not a good people usually don't have those allegations thrown around if you're completely innocent. So a little bit of baggage there. So they bring him in, and that alienates a large portion of the fan base. Well, especially the female portion of the fan base. Like, why you bring this guy back in? At least Rick Hahn, when he signed him last offseason, had the excuse where that didn't come out until after he was signed. So they had that excuse like, hey, we didn't know, found him innocent, let him pitch. And to Clevinger's credit, he did pitch well for the White Sox last year. He was probably their best starting pitcher. 3.77 ERA throughout the whole season. He looked pretty, he threw the ball well last season. Despite that, though, nobody wanted him at the trade deadline. White Sox placed him on waivers. Anyone could have taken him. Nobody wanted to pick him up. Now, when he was on waivers, they would have had to pay a decent amount of money, I think, with that buyout, which for a few starts at the end of the year, they're not going to be paying. I think it was a couple $1 million. Teams. So I understand why no one necessarily wanted him on waivers, but they still could have traded for him. Nobody wanted him. When he's on waivers, nobody wanted him. Free agency. Once again, nobody picked up the phone. I heard a report. The first team to call Mike Clevinger was the White Sox. So now you're asking yourself, why are you bringing in a guy like Mike Clevinger? It's because you're alienating a portion of the fan base. This team is not suspected to be good. Now, I would understand, not necessarily agree with it, but I would understand if you're in contention, you will bite the bullet on a guy with baggage if he's pitching well and he's going to help you win ball games. Mike Clevinger probably will help the White Sox win baseball games, but what good does that do this year? They have 8 wins. It's not really going to make a difference. I would understand if you're signing him to try and trade him, like they're suggesting they're going to do here, but no teams wanted him last year when he pitched well. What makes you think that teams are going to want him this year when he pitches well? So now we get to like his current debut. He got knocked around a little bit. And despite all that baggage, I hate to say it, this might be, people might not be happy. I'm rooting for him to pitch well this season. 1, because I like watching the White Sox win. But 2, he needs to pitch well because I want to see him traded. If we were going to put up with all this baggage and all this crap and all these people getting angry, we might as well get some sort of prospect back for him halfway through the year. So they're taking a gamble. Griscat's already took a big gamble from a PR standpoint. If you're going to say you want to earn the trust of the Sox fans back, bringing him in is already, you're rolling the dice because that pissed a lot of people off, understandably so. So I hope for Clevinger's sake that he does throw the ball well this year so they can try and trade him. But I mean, that first start, it looked rough. It'd be one thing. And he was knocking off some rust. Pedro said after the game, like, look, he only had 2 starts in Charlotte. There was some rust there. Corey Lee defended him. And I know there's a lot of White Sox players that have come out defended him. I know Dylan Cease said last year he was a good teammate. Pedro really wanted him back. Corey Lee said they were happy to have him back after that game. So we'll see how it goes. But it's kind of a gamble. If he pitches poorly, now like Chris Getz is going to have some explaining to do because now you have a guy that's blocking some younger starters like Jonathan Cannon from getting more opportunities. So I hope he pitches well just for the fact so they can trade him. Now, looking down the rest of that list of guys that they're looking to trade, Fetty, I think he makes the most sense. I think with the way he's throwing right now, he's going to get you the most value out of any of these guys. Kopech's another one that could be interesting depending on how he keeps throwing the ball. Eloy Jimenez, I don't think nets all that much because he's still owed a decent amount of money. And with the injury, because there's only one spot you can really put him is at DH. So I don't really expect a ton back this year. So this will be very telling to see. And the Grossman trade, I think was a good start. They got good value for a guy that, he wasn't hitting all that well. He was just getting on base and he's not like a great defender. So that's a good first step. So I'll be interested to see if he can trade all these guys, especially Clevinger. I really hope that he's the one guy I hope they do get something for because, at least justify me having to watch him pitch every 5th day with, those allegations that they had. So we'll see how that all pans out. Now, White Sox lost another game last night. No surprise there. It was very ugly. White Sox are now off to the worst start in franchise history at 8-28 through 36 games. They now have a negative 92 run differential. Chris Getz talked about, and this is also going to like the accountability. So this is leading into what we're going to be talking about with the accountability stuff. But all offseason, we got to improve this defense. We got to improve the culture here. And that starts with improving the defense because free agent pitchers, they didn't want to come here. So we got to improve the defense. Well, their defense stinks. They're last in defensive runs saved right now. I think they are 7th in the MLB in errors. On top of that horrible run differential, Pedro's talking about rambling how, hey, we got this acronym FAST. We're going to be playing fearless, aggressive, selfless, technically sound baseball, and none of that has happened. Right now, they rank dead last in the MLB in batting average, on-base percentage, OPS, slugging percentage, walks, pitches seen, WAR, home runs, runs scored, hits, barrel percentage, and hard hit percentage. I think I said they were tied for 7th. They're actually tied for 6th in errors right now. Last in defensive run save. So they drop another game last night. Ozzie Guillen gets on the White Sox post-game show, and he sounded off on the team, and rightfully so, calling them out for their lack of accountability. He says, here's his quote. He says, the word accountability. They say that every day. They're lying. They're not accountable. They don't. I'm sorry. They don't. They're not. I told my wife last night, I got home. She was like, are you okay? I said, no, I'm tired of watching this thing every day in and day out. I'm getting paid, yes, but I'm a White Sox fan, bro. And that's telling because you have this, like the NBC Sports Chicago post-game show. Like, look, they're owned by Ryan Zarf and them. They're White Sox employees. They're supposed to kind of toe the company line. Now, I give Guillen credit because he will be critical of the team. They have been critical of the team on that show. But when you're coming out and saying, like, straight up, calling out the manager like that for the lack of accountability, that was very telling to me because that's the type of thing that usually gets you fired with petty owners like Jerry Reinsdorf. So that was interesting, but he's spot on. He is spot on. The fact that Chris Getz, we're going to improve the defense. Has the defense improved this year? No. Pedro Grifol, we're going to play fast, technically sound baseball. Does it look like technically sound baseball they're playing? No. These guys are not taking professional at-bats. And I'm not saying they're not trying, but at some point, you got to hold some of these players accountable and the coach, the manager accountable. We are seeing the same issues that we saw last year, and the roster has been completely overhauled. I know the team got a lot worse than from what last year was, but how are we seeing the same mistakes we saw with these veterans that were supposedly lazy, and they didn't care? Well, now we got all these guys that, look like they're trying to care, and we're still seeing the same mistakes, and nobody is held accountable from it. Ozzie hit it right on the head. I'm glad he had the balls to come out and say it on that post-game show because it's true. And it's frustrating to watch as Sox fans. Like, Sox fans, they're not idiots. I mean, maybe we are because we watch this team every day despite the fact that they lose so much. But he's right. He's right. Something's got to change. I don't know what. This is where I did see this argument on Twitter where they're like, look, at some point, someone brought up look, this is the players' fault. It's an easy take to blame Reinsdorf when the players are the ones who are not performing. So they're ranking the order of blame. But I think it does start at the top with Reinsdorf because who are the ones hiring all these guys? They keep hiring new coach. We say this every year, like the coaching staff needs to change. How many hitting coaches have they gone through in the last 3 to 5 years? I think they've changed the hitting coach the last 3 years in a row. We've had Frank Manakito. Now, they roll through hitting coaches. That doesn't seem to change. We hired terrible managers. Like the Tony La Russa hire, I'm sorry, that was a bad hire. That completely backfired. I think they won in spite of him, but that was a total sideshow and an unnecessary distraction for a very good team that overcame that in 2021. And then in 2022, it was still a distraction and they didn't have the breaks go their way. So I think that really derailed a lot of the momentum they had. Then you bring in Pedro. Obviously, that's been a mistake. They're on track to be one of the worst teams in MLB history. So that's where it does start, at the top with Jerry Reinsdorf. Because if you're not willing to spend the money on the guys, and he was willing to spend when Hahn was in, that's a kind of a misconception. He's cheap because they haven't spent over $100 million on a player, which is true. You probably should if you want to win. But they were in the top 10 in payroll for 2 years in a row. But Rick Hahn identified the wrong free agents to bring in. Well, who's hiring the guy and who let him stay there for 10 years? Jerry. So that's where it starts at the top from Jerry. And that's why I think he's obviously the most to blame for this mess because he's the one hiring these guys. He's the one that hired Chris Getz. And now the jury's still out on Chris Getz. I think there's been some good. There's also been some bad. As we were talking about earlier, Clevinger thing is going to be very telling. They are able to get something for him. I will understand why they signed him. If not, you're going to have some explaining to do, especially with how poorly he is pitched and all that that baggage on top of that that has come up. So it's ugly. It's ugly in White Sox land. It was actually funny. I heard an interesting Andy here in the chat. Pedro has to talk to the players the same way he talks to the media, fans. Cookie. Yeah, no, this is right. Andy's right. So he goes, he probably talks to the players the same way he talks to the media and fans with his cookie cutter motivational BS, and everyone sees right through it. Absolutely. Because you hear the same thing every day. He's always like, well, we got to flush it. We're just going to flush this, get back out of it. Guys are working hard. Well, you know what? The toilet's clogged because how many losses they've had to flush this year. It's been that many. You can't just keep saying flush it every day. The guy's working hard. We're going to get this right. It's ridiculous. He's got to be held accountable. Head's got to roll. He's got to go. He should not last the All-Star break. He will. They're not going to make the change, I don't think. But they really should. Because it's getting ridiculous. Now, another interesting thing, actually, I forgot to mention with the trade that I thought was they decided to re-sign Zach Remillard, which had Pedro's fingerprints all over it. He's had a lot of say in these personnel decisions. Apparently, he was one that was lobbying for them to bring Mike Clevinger back in. And I know Pedro really likes Remillard because Remillard is a very good bunter. He, interesting enough, Coastal Carolina when he was in college. I think he laid down 8 successful bunts for a hit in the College World Series, which is a record. We've seen that a lot in the MLB too. It's a good bunter. Pedro likes to play small ball. This team's playing fast, so I can see where he'd like a Zach Remillard. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one that asked him to come back up. But it's a little weird to me that you got Dom Fletcher still in the minor leagues that I thought you would be wanting to evaluate this full season and get a good look at the guy. And they're not calling him back up. So, I mean, that was a little interesting to see. Remillard got called up and then he's probably going to get sent down or DFA'd within a week anyway. So, I mean, we'll see. Not that it really matters there, but I thought that was interesting. But the White Sox right now, and this is no shock, kind of talking about lack of accountability. They're the laughing stock of the MLB. I heard on MLB Network they're talking that opposing teams have to treat the White Sox like it's their World Series because you should come into that series assuming you were going to sweep them. Like it's an opportunity for you guys to take 3 games. Well, I really saw that play out here. I live in central Missouri right now. That really played out this weekend with that Cardinals series. The White Sox, surprisingly, they took 2 of 3 from the Cardinals, got another series win. I believe that's their second series win of the year. But boy, Cardinals fans panicking. You would think that around here, it's like rock bottom. They are like, oh my God, I cannot believe we lost to the White Sox. So they're kind of going through the same conversation. Like, we need to fire somebody. It's bad. Like, they've already been freaking out because I think the Cardinals, and they have expectations every year that they're going to make the playoffs. And that's why, you always hear, oh, there's such great fans. It's like, well, I mean, the team's been good for like the last decade. Of course, they're getting these good turnouts. I think you see that in most cities. If the team's good and you have a watchable product, people are going to show up. Everyone always rags on the White Sox for the attendance stuff, but you saw they made the playoffs that next year in 2022. They had one of their highest attendances in the last decade because people will show up if the team is good. So that's where Cardinals, I think that number is a little deceiving because they're consistently in contention. All these fans show up. But now they're starting to get these crowds middle of the week, like mid-20s, like a typical White Sox crowd. And they're like, oh my God, I've never seen Busch Stadium like this. This is rock bottom. But it was really funny how panicked these teams, this team was, an organization was, just for the fact that they had lost to the White Sox in a series. And if you are the White Sox, I mean, that should be all you need to know. You are the new Oakland Athletics right now. You are the new Oakland Athletics where teams are rolling in expecting to beat you. And the guy who's leading the ship is the guy who came in his introductory press conference saying, we are going to prepare every night to kick your ass. Well, guess what? All these teams are coming in expecting to kick your ass every night. So you got to look in the mirror. And it goes back to what Ozzie said. Hold yourself accountable. Enough with these bullshit cookie cutter answers. Let a fire under their ass or something. I mean, that's like that. Something needs to change. You got to hold these guys. It's too much, and I get trying to protect your players, but when you're seeing all these mistakes and like simple errors and stuff, I mean, come on, call someone out. Do something. Fires. I mean, they got to get a spark somehow. It's a tough watch, but it'll be interesting to see how things progress moving forward. I like that guy they got from the Rangers. I think that should be interesting to see how he progresses. It looks like he's got pretty good stuff. Again, right now, if you're just joining us, Texas League has not given up a run this year. 3.15 career ERA in the minors. That's pretty good. So they might have something here. And that also kind of feeds to the fact if you're able to trade Kopech, you got Leisure, who looks like a good reliever. This kid could be a good reliever. So I'm glad they're restocking the pitching. They got a lot of good pitching prospects. Those other guys now, maybe even like Clevinger we're talking about with Clevinger and Jimenez and Kopech and Fetty. Let's get some more positional players in to restock this farm system. And hopefully by trading some of these veterans, now we're able to get some of these younger guys up. Because at this point, like, look, obviously, like, wins are not going to mean much. I would rather watch the team win. That's why I like having Tommy Pham there. But, like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense playing Tommy Pham when you should be evaluating these other younger guys, like even with Lenyn Sosa. We think he's a quad A player. Just give him the rest of the year in the MLB. Why not? See what you got. Make damn sure what you got. It's the same way I feel about Andrew Vaughn. He's hitting terribly right now. He doesn't have a home run yet. Kevin Pillar just hit 2 the other day, and that he now has 3 on the year. Who would have thought at this point of the year Kevin Pillar would have more home runs than Andrew Vaughn, which is kind of sad. But, let him figure out his struggle. I'm fine with them keeping him in the major leagues the rest of the year. It's make sure he's the guy. And if he's not after this year, if this is the performance, this is who Andrew Vaughn is, so be it. We'll go with Tim Elko. But I don't think sending him down to AAA does anyone any good. I mean, maybe it'll build his I don't know. Maybe you send him down for a week and it helps build his confidence. But like even then, he's tearing it up in like AAA. Like, I mean, what good does that do? I'd rather Jim just keep him in the majors, give him as many at bats as they can, get as big of a sample size as you can. At the end of the year, all right, this is what he is. So be it. We shall see. But be interesting to watch the rest of the way. White Sox got the Cleveland Guardians this weekend. Big tailgate. Chicago Sports Bums, whiskey at Kaminski. So if you're in the area, you should show up to that. And also make sure you tune in tonight. The Pinwheels and Ivy show at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Central. Fids, Aldo, Zoe will be on there. Their reaction to this White Sox trade and a lot more Cubs talk for all you Cubs fans out there as well. Cubs playing some, they Cody Bellinger's back. Exciting walk-off last night with Michael Busch. So some exciting stuff going on there. Make sure, check out Homage. If you scan the link up in the top right corner here, it'll take you to our sponsor who's sponsoring this episode of Homage. They got some cool shirts. You can get a White Sox shirt, get an Indy 500 shirt. It's the month of May. You can get a Bears shirt for the draft. Caleb Williams, that excitement hasn't worn off yet. You name it, they probably got a shirt for you. They got almost every MLB team. They got some really cool vintage throwback shirts. So check them out. Use that QR code in the top right-hand corner and tune in to Pinwheels and Ivy tonight at 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week.